it's one of the things that why I'm here is because I think this very topic, the lie from my perspective that women are cursed and that this is a justification for other people's behaviors toward them. If I've seen it once, I've seen it a lot of times. I think it's so important for women, particularly, to understand the truth of what you're saying. That you're not devalued,
No, no.
but you'd be hard pressed to understand that in certain places.
Welcome to the Eden Podcast, where we true the verse of Genesis 3:16, and we discover that God didn't curse Eve or Adam or limit woman in any way.
Welcome to the Eden Podcast. I'm Bruce C.E. Fleming, and this is Tru316. Our website is Tru316.com, and our special interview this episode is Patrick Doyle. I'd like to welcome. Hi, Patrick. How are you?
Hi, welcome. Glad to be here.
Thank you. So Patrick Doyle is a Scottish composer and occasional actor, best known for, oh wait, that's the wrong Patrick, pardon me. There we go. Patrick Doyle is a best-selling author, speaker, and counselor with more than 30 years of experience guiding individuals through healing from emotional abuse, addiction, and trauma. He's the founder of Pathway to Hope, an online community dedicated to helping women rebuild trust in themselves, set healthy boundaries, and find freedom from toxic cycles. Patrick has been pastor, directed nonprofits, spoken at conferences, and appeared on radio, TV, and YouTube, where you can find scores of videos from The Patrick Doyle Show and more. He shares his compassionate, practical approach with thousands worldwide. Beyond his work, he enjoys baseball, travel, live music, and spending time with his two adult sons. And we have news, his brand new grandson.
Yay, yes. Pretty
So,
awesome.
so we welcome Levi to
Yes,
the fold.
yes. Levi's
Congratu-
here now.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So did you see him live and in person or on Zoom or?
Yes, yes. Live and in person, held him for hours,
Oh
made
yeah,
a bond. Looking forward to more.
yeah. Oh, that's so good. Yeah. I had two little ones wish me a happy birthday this weekend, and they put a collage together and said they didn't have all the letters, but they got close to happy birthday. So that's always fun and a blessing from the Lord.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about your story. We have
Okay.
several questions we'd like to do on the Eden podcast. So
Okay.
let's start with your faith story. How'd you come to Christ and begin to grow in Him?
Well, Bruce, one of the ways that I learned a lot about trauma was by being in it. So I was born into an alcoholic family. My father was a violent two-war PTSD alcoholic. My mom died when I was 10 years old on Christmas morning, which was quite tragic. And then I was left with my crazy father. Now, all my siblings are at least 10 years or more older than me. So they were all gone by the time I was a child. And so growing up in that very dangerous environment was, traumatic. And then when I was a teen, my sister, who's 14 years older than I, had moved to Oregon. And she knew that things were not good. And she knew that my mom had died and she wanted to try to help me. So she had me come live with her. Well, I started smoking pot, Bruce, when I was 10 years old.
Hmm.
My dream in life at 12 was to be the head of a drug cartel. So my sister knew that things were not going well.
Yeah.
So I went to live with her, and after
Wow.
a year and a half, she was so fed up and frankly overwhelmed by my behavior. She sent me back to my dad, knowing what I was going back to, and she sadly said, "We just can't do it." They had a baby by then, and I was just too much of a negative influence on the family. So went back to my dad. Uh, I moved out on my own, very quickly because I was making a significant amount of money selling drugs on my own. Got my own apartment at 16. Well on my way to accomplishing my goal of becoming the head of a drug cartel. At 17, I had an experience with one of the guys that was I was getting drugs from, and he threatened my life
Mm.
very specifically. And I was like, oh, I probably should do something different. long story short, my dad at the same time was in a lot of trouble, and he asked me to do a favor and drive him back to another part of the country because he was so incapacitated he couldn't drive. And so I said under one condition, which is something I never done to my dad, is have a condition because he was always the powerful, dangerous person. I said, you got to get my sister in Oregon to take me back.
Wow.
Well, the interim year and a half that I was gone, my sister and her husband had gotten saved.
Oh.
So they had started to grow in their spiritual life and they had started to develop, a community and they've been going to a church real regularly and they had gotten sober and they were never really bad, but they did a few things here and there. And so long story short, she agreed to take me back.
Hmm.
I got there on November 7th, 1980, and I went to church with them on November 9th, 1980, and gave my life to Christ.
Wow. Wow.
That fast.
Yeah, yeah, sister. Yeah.
And so
Yeah,
they
God.
had
Yeah,
that
God.
weekend, they had a friend in town who they hadn't seen in a long time. And the whole time they were witnessing to him, witnessing to him, witnessing to him. And they weren't really talking to me because, I just moved there. They figured they had time, whatever.
Yeah,
But it
yeah,
was like, sometimes you watch someone get hypnotized.
yeah. You were listening.
I was listening and
Yeah,
taking it all in, but I think it was also part of the beauty of it is they weren't talking to me
yeah.
because I was so defensive and I had so much shame about
Uh,
the things I had done. And uh, anyway, so at 17, began my journey.
Great.
And then I joined the military out of high school at 18. And I quickly got into, I was, my first duty station was Frankfurt, West Germany, which is a very dangerous place for an 18-year-old kid with money and opportunity. So I found this group of people. It was a ministry house, and every weekend, that this couple, they were with the Assemblies of God, they would open their home, and we would all go stay there and have fellowship, and do worship nights and study the Bible, and that was like an accelerated growth process for me because
Right.
I was able to avoid all of the things that Germany offered in a very unhealthy way, which was my previous life.
Mhm.
So I had a lot of fear about that. Anyway, so I grew significantly and then left the military, went into ministry. I was worked for Youth for Christ and did that. And then
Well, no, I did too. So
you did?
I was in Ohio. Where were you for
I
that?
was in Oregon.
In
Yep,
Oregon.
in
Really?
Oregon. Yeah.
Who was your
And
director?
uh, Don Hildebrand was the first one.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
Don was 25 or 30 years as the executive director
Wow.
here in this chapter.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then I forget the other guy's name. Anyway, actually, then when I started my church, the current executive director became my associate
Oh.
uh, at my church. So long story short, through ministry and then therapy, I was also counseling and working in various agencies and drug and alcohol agencies, psych units, you name it, a gamut of places. I was working full time after I left Youth for Christ in counseling. And then, after years, Bruce, I sat in my office as a counselor who is a Christian, and I was watching the failure of what we were doing. I
Hmm.
was watching the failure of particularly churches in my area that were, from my perspective, mishandling things
Wow.
because of the results. And to your point and to your ministry, a lot of it was about how they viewed the woman.
Hmm.
And I learned the hard way.
Wow.
Then over time, I'm probably mixing the two questions, but over time I was so frustrated. And remember, I was also on the radio and TV on a regular basis. I was on the Dove TV for, I don't know, 12, 14 years. Started as radio program, then it became TV and radio, and then it became TV, radio, and YouTube. Their YouTube channel, not my YouTube channel. And
Hmm.
some of the videos I did got hundreds of thousands of hits. And so I was like, I want to start a church or I want to help this problem. So I went to the church I currently was a part of and I said, hey, can we try to do some of this? And can we try this? And I'll volunteer my time, my expertise. I'll train, I'll teach, whatever. And they were like, sure, yeah, let's do it. And then nothing. And then I'd ask again and then sure. And then nothing. So what I realized is that they, in idea, they wanted to do it. And in practicality, they did not want to do it. And the reason why I believe is because it's kind of messy.
Yeah.
Getting into the lives of people in a real deeper way, it's not easy.
Mhm.
And so I've always had a desire for the deeper side. I've always had a desire for the messy. The messy is fun, enjoyable. It's not overwhelming to me. It's where I like to be.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, so funny, interesting little caveat here. There was a point in time during that period of time where I was working at a an agency. I was the director of a drug and alcohol and mental health agency, and I treated somebody who was a 32-year senator from the state of Oregon. And I thought to myself, maybe I'll become a politician and I can change these things.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And so I arranged with this guy who was also the co-chair of Ways and Means for 10 years. So he was the guy responsible for the budget of the state. So I said, hey, can I come shadow you? I'd like to run for office, but I want to know what I'm getting into first. He's like, sure, come on up. Well, after 3 days of that, Bruce, I can tell you that I was very clear that I could not do that.
That was not.
There was too much bad. I just was like, there's so much injustice here. This is not going to change anything.
Mhm.
So in my thinking about that, one of the things that I really felt inspired by was that if I really wanted to have an impact, then helping people see who God is the best way. So maybe I should start a church.
Okay. Yeah.
And I was really resistant to that idea because I already had a full-time counseling office. I had the radio and TV. I was involved in many things in the community, all the things that somebody who cares would be involved in, I was involved in. So I was
Mhm.
like, where I have two boys, I don't, I can't. Long story short, you know how it works. It kept coming around. I kept getting encouraged by people. I kept opportunity kept, and then eventually there's a group of us, and then we decided to start a church.
At a church.
Now, two of my inspirations were Dr. Larry Crabb, who's no longer here,
Yeah.
and Eugene Peterson.
Mhm.
Um, and one of the things that Eugene taught me was he said, look, the pastor's job is not primarily to teach, it's to be with the people.
Mhm.
And so, and as you're with people, you will have your opportunity to teach.
Interesting. Yeah.
And so that was the inspiration for me to start the church because what I was looking to do, Bruce, was create a community of people that was spiritually safe and emotionally safe
Mhm.
so that we could grow.
Mhm.
Because I believe safety is one of the main ingredients needed for growth.
So how do you go about you want to start a church? How did you start the church?
So, I mean, obviously, I was on the radio and TV. Here's the other thing. I never, ever once in all of my radio and TV appearances mentioned that I was going to start a church or that I had a church. And I had a very specific reason for that because I didn't want people coming because I was somebody, a celebrity on the radio or TV. I
Yeah.
wanted people coming because they wanted to come to the church. And
Mhm.
so it was organic because really my thing, Bruce, was about relationships.
Mhm.
If we could develop some healthy relationships, people are going to grow at a rapid pace.
Sure.
And they're going to have the kind of support in their lives when difficulty happens or when celebrations happen, whatever it is, good or
Mhm.
bad. There
Mhm.
we have actually a strong core fellowship. And in that, we're moving things into the community. So as a result of that church, one of the things that we were doing, one of the people that was used to be my assistant, she was a thespian and she was amazingly creative. And so she had this idea to do a live nativity.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I was like, okay, tell me about this. And so she told me about it, and she had a whole vision. Like we're going to reenact certain scenes of the scripture that builds the nativity scenes.
Mhm.
And so the church that I had money because I didn't take a salary. No one took a salary. They paid a stipend, which was, nothing I could live on. And that was another thing I wanted, is I never wanted to be on the payroll because that changes everything.
Mhm.
Now I have to see things in a little different way. So the church never needed money. It always had plenty because we would spend money on paying for people's college, or we would, help them with whatever they needed. They needed their car broke down. So it wasn't going to salary, and we rented a building. We actually rented, Bruce, a 1863.
Oh my.
I live in a little historic town here in Jacksonville, Oregon, and that church was built by the Presbyterians in 1863, still stands, and is in the pews, oddly enough, are divided down the middle because they had men on one side and women and children on the other.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So that, we were doing this I think, very healing work within a church where I think a lot of that harm, that theology created a
Oh,
lot of harm over time.
wow.
So um, we did this live nativity, and that's what the kind of things we did in the community. It was a 3-day event. We had thousands of people go through. They got to see, and the last scene that she developed was so beautiful because it's Christ coming, and all of that, all of the actors, and we paid the actors. These were not just volunteers. We were real actors that had, skill, because we really wanted to like it to be vibrant. So it was just amazing. So we did lots of stuff like that because we wanted to be part of the community. We wanted to have relationships, and we didn't want to be an organization that consumed all those resources. We
Hmm.
wanted to give them away.
Hmm.
So, and as a result, 9 years of full-time uh, business as counseling every day, and then weekends doing the church. I had a full plate and then all the opportunities that came from being on the radio and TV and stuff. So it was a beautiful time. I don't do that anymore. The church eventually did fold for various reasons. A couple of the guys that were in leadership that took it over left the area, and it was like,
Yeah.
it's kind of dissipated. But I think also that's a very hard vision to continue because it's very intensive in the sense that you're not just getting up and teaching. I'm with the people, and there's a lot of interaction, lots of people having people over. It was kind of I don't know how to describe it. It was like a family,
Yeah.
and it was really beautiful. So, you know, my early years of being without that, and then all of my education through all the different Christian authors that I read, all the different people that I got an opportunity to meet, and then all of the years of sitting in my office talking to people really helped sort of build that vision.
Now,
Um,
I had a course. It was called pastoral counseling in
yeah,
seminary. One course,
yeah, right.
and
Yeah,
and
that's enough to train you.
Yeah, Gary Collins was the professor,
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
he had us read different people, and Gary said, "I'm not like some of these other ones who nouthetic this or whatever that." He said, "I think there's lots of professional psychology that we can take and we can use in the church." And in
Mhm.
those days, the pastor was considered to be the counselor too in the
Right,
church,
right, right.
not
Mhm.
just preacher, but also counselor, all that kind of
Right,
stuff.
right.
So did you have a counseling ministry in the church at the same time?
No, well, yes. I sort of
I heard a yes and a no there.
because it wasn't your obvious thing. It wasn't like we set up a ministry, but we provided that opportunity financially for people, and we got them to places where they could get it. And sometimes it was with me, but because my schedule was already full, that was hard to accomplish. But we did provide that, but it wasn't just with me. I wanted the community to support it.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
in our area there were some decent options. So and it's a process, and it was so alive.
Mm,
That's the thing that I was so appreciative about it, is so you couldn't predict it.
yeah.
Uh,
So now you're
so
doing Pathway to Hope. Can you define that for us? And how's
Yeah.
that work?
So that was the other thing in this process, Bruce. Some of the videos that I did on the Dove that took off, that were very popular, were videos I did on emotional abuse.
Mm,
Now, having somebody that's a pastor and within the church talking about emotional abuse and saying that it's not okay, and that I don't think that you're required to stay in an abusive relationship,
mhm.
was revolutionary for some people. And coming from a pastor, I think that really helped them. Like, oh, and I obviously talked about the reasons why I wasn't just, making, statements off the cuff.
Right.
So what I saw in that process, one of the most difficult things for a woman who's going through this process in a faith community, regardless of what flavor it uh, is support. And what I realized that was needed was safe support that wasn't going to try to fix it. So they have enough of that on their own. Every one of the women I've had the privilege of working with is very diligent to look into things, to read things, to gather information, to try to solve this problem.
Mm-hmm.
So what I realized is they needed a safe place to have support.
Mm-hmm.
So the information that I have on my program, it's good. It's good information. I've got a lot of experience. It's very practical, but that's only that to me, that's not the piece that does the changing. I have a very strong core belief, Bruce, that the avoidance of pain is the beginning of all unhealthy behavior.
Hmm.
And that safety, not information, is more important for the healing process. Because when someone starts to feel safe, particularly if they've been in an abusive environment, that safety is what gives them the courage to start to take action.
So, do you have any familiarity with our Tru316 ministry and what we talk
Yes, I do. And what's one of the things that why I'm here is because I think this very topic, the lie from my perspective that women are cursed and that this is a justification for other people's behaviors toward them. If I've seen it once, I've seen it a lot of times. I think it's so important for women, particularly, to understand the truth of what you're saying. That you're not devalued,
about? No, no.
but you'd be hard pressed to understand that in certain places. You would be told very clearly, and I've heard it 1,000 times if I heard it once, Bruce, that they were told they're the problem. You know, I and that's the other thing. My experience of talking to thousands of people is why I know this has to be addressed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's a very problematic theological reality that we have.
I came across a video the other day, and it was of the Sistine Chapel,
Mm,
Michelangelo's work. It's the
mm,
private chapel of the Pope. And
mm,
I was there once, but they've cleaned it up since. And so
mm.
there's these panels on the ceiling. One is talking about the sun, and oh, look, there's the moon. They hadn't seen it from all the years of candle smoke, and
Wow.
it
Mhm.
wasn't clear. And then there's the hand of God. He's reaching down and
Yeah.
giving life to the first human there, Adam. He's talking to him. Well, there's another frame next to it, and that is where you've got the temptation at the tree. And
Hmm.
and in it, one of the things that I hadn't noticed when I was there, but as I'm looking at it now, the serpent that's wrapped around the tree, tempting the two of them from the torso up, is a female. Michelangelo painted a female serpent, and
Yeah.
so I'm looking this up, and they're saying, well, this is related to medieval theology that said that that the woman and the serpent were in league with each other, and
Mm.
so they painted the serpent as being a female, and that the female was the source of all temptation.
Right.
And I thought right there in the Pope's chapel, you've got, the female is the temptress.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
so
Well,
you're in,
that
we got problems coming into our theology if that's in there.
well, I mean, I don't want to get into it, but the Catholics have made a few mistakes.
Yeah, that was one. That was and
Yeah.
apparently it was from he had also imported things from the Kabbalah and non-Christian sources, non-biblical
Yeah.
sources.
Yeah.
And so in our world today, we've got all kinds of non-biblical sources coming in here. And so Joy and I are just trying to say, look, what does the Hebrew text say?
Hmm.
You've got God putting them into the Garden of Eden. You got the attack and the consequences of the attack, and then they're out of the Garden of Eden. And that the woman actually comes out pretty heroic here because the man, God says to the man, what have you done, to both of them? And the man speaks up and he says, well, I
Yeah.
Why is he speaking singular? It's they.
Yeah.
But so he's just, and he doesn't mention the voice from the serpent. Then God says to her, "Okay, what have you done?" And she said, I just recognized something. I've been deceived by that tempter right there, and I ate." And God immediately doesn't put her down. He turns to the serpent and says, "Because you have done this, what she just said, I'm taking her words, her
Yeah.
testimony, and I'm
Hmm.
applying it in my judgment against you."
Yep.
It's just amazing what's going on. And then Joy
That-
points out that God, when he speaks to the man and to the serpent, there's six things that he says to both of them. A very close Hebrew pattern. One, because you cursed is all the days of your life
Right.
for those two.
Yeah.
But from the woman, none of those six things are mentioned. It's totally cleaned up. It's totally different. He treats her
Right. Right.
very separately, and so you got
Right.
to say, well, why? How is she different?
Right.
And
Mhm.
the man was a first degree eater in the sense that he did it on purpose,
Yeah.
and she was a
Oh, for
second
sure.
degree eater.
Yeah.
Now, if you eat, you're going to
Yep.
die. So they
Yeah.
both died. But
Right.
and then to her he says, I'm you're going to have pain in when you're doing field work because I'm going to curse the ground because of the man. You're both going to have that sorrowful toil,
Right.
and you're going to have conception. I threatened the serpent that your seed is going to crush his head, but I'm confirming it to you personally. You will have that multiplied pregnancy. And so he's very gentle and very marvelous. So the
Yeah.
treatment of women
Yeah.
actually is heroic and marvelous.
Yep.
And yet we say, oh, there were three curses, there were three culprits,
Yeah. Mhm.
there were two, the
Right.
serpent and the woman.
Yes.
And of course, then you build New Testament theology on that, and we get into all kinds of problems.
Oh my gosh. Well, if we're going to launch a rocket, Bruce, right? And we're on 1 degree off at launch,
Yeah.
we're going to land way, 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 way off down there.
And you launch in the Garden of Eden.
Yep, exactly. And so this journey for me started a long time ago with a book that Dr. Larry Crabb wrote.
Good.
It's called The Silence of Adam.
Ah,
And in the book, he goes into this, and it was like a revolution to me, like because I was, trained theologically, and I would have been your worst nightmare in terms of that.
hmm
And so he talks about, one of the questions he asks is where was Adam? Because everybody's talking about, he wasn't there, and I mean, like he theologically proves that Adam was right there,
Sure.
and that's the basis of the book. And then he talks about, wait, the way we've been characterizing this is all off.
Huh. Good for him.
And as a respected therapist, psychologist, for me it was like that was the entry point for me because I respected his voice
hmm hmm
theologically. I
hmm
respected his voice as a therapist, as a psychologist. And so I was like, oh, and then that planted a seed. And then in my practice, I kept seeing it over and over and over again. Okay, this is
And,
that.
and
So the
and
consequences are huge.
and they blame the women and they gaslight the women and it's just terrible.
Mhm. Yes, I could tell a lot of hair-raising stories
Yeah.
about what I have heard men in leadership and in pastoral situations say
Mm.
that are, to me, if it's as destructive as they're saying, I can't say it. It's a lie.
So now I had fun. I went on your YouTube channel and I saw Sheila and her daughter.
Yes.
And here is I was on Sheila and
Oh yeah.
a
There you go.
couple times, so she's cleaning things up. There are
She's doing
others.
some great work.
Yep.
Yes. I actually interviewed Sheila for my online program, the Pathway to Hope. She's on there.
Okay, that's where.
Sheila,
Yeah.
because we're talking about the very same thing. Like, you know, um, her research is pivotal, I think,
hmm
in terms of it's not an opinion.
No, it's backed up by
It-
research. Yeah.
and that's one of the things that people often say, well, they spiritualize it and say, well, blah, 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 blah. And then Sheila, like, here are the, I love that.
23,000,
Yeah,
23,000
I
people.
love the fact that she did that research, and
Yeah.
so we can put an end to that. I mean, we all knew it. If anybody listening or anybody being honest goes, yeah, that's happening.
hmm
And I've heard so many stories of harm Bruce, that's what I do every day is I listen to stories of harm.
Yeah.
And I listen to stories where churches and pastors support harm.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's what I mean, I think we're in an uphill struggle against that theology, which is why I'm so glad you're doing what you're doing,
Yeah.
because you're doing it from a very clear theological approach, right? We're not ever just rattling off, oh, we don't think it's right. We're like, no, here are the theological reasons why, and
Yeah.
here's the linguistic reasons why.
Hmm.
So it's an intelligible argument.
Hmm.
It's not just an opinion. And so I have thousands of actual people's stories that validate it,
Hmm.
but people don't really care about that when they're having the debate. They don't really want to know about my anecdotal realities. But listen, I'm neck deep in it every day and trying to help women find freedom from the oppression of the system
Hmm.
that we built.
Yeah.
And I say we because I was a part of it.
That's a shame.
I I I I I've given the bad advice. I now say not
Yeah.
to listen
Well,
to.
we all learned that, and we thought it was right,
Yeah, I
and
did.
it wasn't right. So,
No, no.
yeah.
Yeah, and so I think that we have to address it in this way, like what Sheila's doing, like what you're doing.
Hmm.
And my contribution is providing safety and healing to those people that are in it.
Hmm.
That's where I spend my time and energy is I'm neck deep in the difficulty that that woman is having uh, with her husband, with her children, with her church, and helping her navigate that in a way that's safe and leading her to safety.
Hmm.
And a lot of people don't want to understand that there are a lot of women living in church situations that are in very high danger. And it may not be physical,
Yeah.
but it is very high danger emotionally and I would say spiritually. The amount of harm that they are being exposed to by people in leadership, people around them, and some people are, I would say, they don't have bad intentions, but they're very uninformed, and so therefore their behavior ends up not doing well.
Joy and I got out of a dugout canoe. This has been some years back, and we
Yeah,
were crossing from one African country to another, and they were asking her about what she taught at the seminary, and she said, "Well, Old Testament, and especially the Garden of Eden." And they said, "We love the God of the Genesis 2. He puts them in the Garden of Eden, walks with them, gives them a lot of good food. But we don't trust the God of Genesis 3 because he curses them and kills them and throws them out of the garden." And she
right,
and she said, "Well, actually, he he doesn't curse either the man or the woman, and he doesn't do that." And they said, "Well, yeah, but he did curse the woman with pain and childbirth." And she said, "Actually, the Hebrew, there's a mistranslation in your Bible here. In the Hebrew, he did not curse her with pain and childbirth." And they said, "Well, we got to come and take your class." So
right.
so one of the things we're finding out is that even in the church, people say, "Yeah, but I don't trust God or I don't trust the Bible." So
Hmm.
there are systematic theologians out there. We're not that. We're biblical theologians. So
Hmm.
we try to give the passage
Hmm.
first to the people.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I like the idea of us, working together here. You know,
Hmm.
you give them a safe space, and we give them a safe scripture because it
Hmm.
is,
Yeah.
and our hope is that they'll be able to grow and flourish
Hmm.
and be
Yeah.
safe.
Yeah. And that's happening.
Yeah, good.
Um, I want it to happen more,
Hmm. Well,
but it's happening.
let's put a bookmark in there right now.
Okay. Okay.
I've been talking with Patrick Doyle, and he is star of stage and screen and church, and we're very appreciative of your spending time with us today on the Eden
Sure.
podcast. Okay,
Absolutely.
thank you, Patrick.
You bet.
Tru316 Foundation is the home of the Eden podcast. Join us for $3.16 a month or more. Let's true the verses on the key passages on women and men. Go to tru316.com/partner. Tru316 is strengthening and encouraging many, and we're getting stories every day of lives changed through our ministry. We're the home of the Eden podcast, and we're getting the word out that God didn't curse Eve or Adam or limit woman in any way. Our volunteer help is wonderful. And we grow stronger with each new True partner who gives to the Tru316 Foundation so that we can cover the costs to do the technical work of the Eden podcast, to coordinate our True School workshops like the 2-week Eden workshop on Genesis 2 and 3, and to make the Tru316 Foundation function in its outreach to scholars and students around the world. You can give now with a one-time gift. And better still, you can join now and become a monthly donor. We call our monthly donors our True partners. Please join now by going to tru316.com/partner.